Okay, we are recording.
Hey, the open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the provisions extended by Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, signed by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. These provisions suspended the requirement of the open meeting law. Well, I guess I have some echoing going on here.
Hang on one second. We'll all mute ourselves if we're not speaking.
These provisions suspended the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on May 18th, 2022 at 7 p.m. I am Linda Lukowski, the chair of the school committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Erin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Goldner?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Caitlin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Matthew?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Leeds?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Mayette?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Narissa?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Superintendent Brian Forget,
Here and I can hear you.
Administrator of Special Education Shannon Nolan,
I'm here and I can hear you.
School Business Administrator Kyle Warren.
I'm here and I can hear you.
For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how, sorry. Sorry. Sorry, I have a little asthma issue going on. Using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All supporting document materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the agenda, posted agenda. Each vote taken in the meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I'll read the vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families in the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners, students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. The next item on the agenda is Student of the Month. Unfortunately, our Student of the Month presentation will be put off until June, as those involved were unable to join us tonight. The chairperson's remarks. I would like to welcome our new member, Matthew Landers, to the school committee. And also we are welcoming back Paul Lees and Erin. April and May meetings have been a time of hellos and goodbyes. Is Kaylee on here?
Yes, she is. I was going to say,
Okay.
there she is.
Okay. We have one goodbye and a huge thank you to make this meeting, and that is to our student member, Kaylee Abbott Bishop. Kaylee was elected by her peers to represent them on the committee, and she has done that very well. With carefully weighed thoughts, poetic narratives of student life, a great deal of Triton pride, and not a small amount of bravery. Kaylee is graduating this year, and we will have a new student representative joining us in the fall. Thank you so much for all the hard work, and congratulations and good luck with your future endeavors. The next item is the election of officers. At the first meeting after elections, the school committee is required to vote a slate of officers for the upcoming year, including a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. At the April meeting, we discussed eligibility and willingness of members to serve per policy DBD. All positions require at least a year of office. So while new elected members vote for the offices, they are generally not eligible to serve. I have a summary of all the responses here to recap during the votes. Please let me know if I misrepresent what you have said in any way. We will begin by voting a new chair who will take control of the meeting. Eligible to serve in alphabetical order are Caitlin Hunter, Paul Lees, Linda Lukovsky, and Arissa Wallen. Caitlin preferred to only be considered in the event that no one else wanted to serve. Paul Lees did not want to be considered at all. Linda was willing to serve, and Arissa was willing to serve in whatever capacity the board needs, but believed it was in the best interest of the board to have the chair and vice chair be someone who had served in one of those positions before and someone totally new to those positions. So at this time, we'll take some motions to nominate a school committee chairperson.
I nominate Linda as chair.
I will second that.
Does anybody want to nominate anybody else?
Oh, you got to go through with the motion now that you've got one on the table. I know.
I'm sorry, I thought you wanted to be again. I
No,
watched.
no,
the
no,
meeting.
Matt, it's perfectly fine.
Okay.
It's perfectly fine. I have no problem being the chair again. So can we do a roll call vote?
You need to go discussion first and then a roll call vote. Yeah.
Any discussion? We'll have a roll call vote. Erin,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. I want to thank all of you. I appreciate your confidence of me. It's an honor to represent you and be the person who will serve you as the chair. Now we will move on to the vice chair, currently held by Narissa Wallen. Eligible for vice chair for the coming year, again, in alphabetical order, are Erin Berger, Paul Goldner, Caitlin, Paul Lees, Paul Mayette, and Narissa. Erin would defer to others because of the time commitment. Paul Goldner would serve but would not be eager to do so. Caitlin will serve if no one else wants to. Paul Lees does not want to serve in any officer capacity. Paul Mayette does not want to serve as vice chair, and Narissa is willing to do what's needed, but again believes the chair and vice chair should be a mixed veteran officer and new officer mix. Could I have a motion to nominate a school committee vice chairperson?
I nominate Caitlin Hunter.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can you just tell, yeah, I have a question. Can you tell us again what Caitlin's response to this was? Because I need to know that before I vote.
Caitlin will serve if no one else wants to. Any other discussion?
Yeah, does anybody else want to serve? Make this very easy, people.
It's been a hard 3 years.
Yeah, and I just want to add for a moment, for all the people out there in the public that are listening to all these committee members, including myself, who don't want to run for these offices, you have to understand there's a ton of time and effort that goes on behind the scenes that all the other school committee members don't buy in, that the chair and the vice chair do. They meet with Brian Forget hours and hours and hours. And so it's not that we don't want to try to assist the committee. It's just that some of us have time to devote to that and some of us just don't. So I'm done. Ready to vote.
Roll call vote. Erin,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin Hunter,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Congratulations, Caitlin. And the last is secretary, which is currently held by Paul Mayette. The one hard criteria for this position is a year of office. So all members except for newly elected member Matt Landers are eligible. Going down the list alphabetically again, Erin and Susanna would both defer to others based on time commitments. Paul Goldner would serve but not eager to do so. Paul Lees doesn't want to be an officer. Paul Mayette is willing and Narissa is willing. Can we have a motion to nominate a school committee secretary? I will nominate Paul Mayette.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, Erin,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes,
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Congratulations, Paul and Caitlin. Okay, subcommittee membership. The school committee currently has 3 subcommittees: finance, personnel and negotiations, policy and advocacy. In the past, the committee had any new members to serve on the subcommittee of the person they are replacing until the June meeting, which in this case would be Matt Landers serving on personnel and negotiations, replacing Maureen Heffernan until June 8th. Matt, do you have any conflicts that would prohibit you from serving or objections to that position?
I do not.
Okay, perfect. I would ask that each of you email me by May 31st, ranking your subcommittee preferences first, second, and third, and noting any conflicts or issues I should take into account. I will put together a potential subcommittee list for the coming year, trying to accommodate everyone as well as I can for a vote at the June business meeting. We will also need a CPAC liaison to the coming year. When you email me with your preferences, please let me know if you would also be willing to serve in that position. Next item is the proposed meeting schedule. In the agenda packet, you will find a proposed schedule for the full school committee meetings for the coming year. Note that this does not include subcommittees. Are there any questions or concerns on the schedule? Can I have a motion to approve the 2022-2023 school committee meeting schedule as presented?
So moved.
Any
I'll
discussion?
second.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, I didn't see who seconded. Can I get that?
Erin,
Okay, thank you.
We're gonna have a roll call vote. Erin,
yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
yes,
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Oral communications from the public. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public, the meeting host muted you as you entered the meeting. If you would like to address the committee, please indicate now that you would like to do so by raising your hand on the video call or using the raise hand option on the participant screen. The meeting host will unmute you so that you can address the committee. Please refer to the public comment policy language on the agenda when making your comments, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. When you have finished speaking, the meeting host will mute you again. The public comment policy language on the agenda reads, members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes.
So we do have members of the public present, but I do not see anyone raising their digital hand or turning their camera on and waving their real hands.
Next item is the consent agenda. I will read aloud the donations. A monetary donation was made by Kathleen Lyons in the amount of $1,000 to help reduce the cost of the senior prom. An Amazon gift card was donated by the Haley family in the amount of $100 to go toward junior prom costs. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion?
A second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I thought what you said on the Lions donation was for the senior prom.
Yes.
I'm reading the junior prom on the paperwork.
You could be right.
It is the junior prom.
So you are correct. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, Erin,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes,
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. The next item is the student representative report. Now we will receive one last report from the student member of the school committee, Kaylee Abbott Bishop.
Apologize, I'm having slight technical difficulties on my end. Over here, there we go. Hello and good evening. First off, I would like to say that I'm sorry. I fear I may have slightly jinxed us last month in saying that it feels like things are returning to normal. However, this is just one of the challenges that we face in this day and age. If someone had told me how the last 3 years would have played out, I'm not so sure that I, or anyone else for that matter, would have thought them to be sane. That being said, I believe that we can all agree that we have learned invaluable lessons along the way. I, for one, have felt their impact firsthand. Our school students are the generation that went from learning basic technology skills in computer lab to completing the majority of their learning online. We know that we are known as the guinea pigs to many. No one knows how this will impact us further down the line. So we survived growing up in a changing world with evolving standards, testings, learning modules, and to top it all off, a pandemic in the middle of the most memorable years of our lives. We understand that nothing lasts forever, though, and there is no such thing as status quo. The world is changing, and education must keep up with it. Thankfully, we find ourselves in a community that believes in this truth. So welcome to our new face, and welcome back to those we've seen before. Triton is as Triton has always been. We are continuing to offer the best possible opportunities to our students as we always have. As the year draws to a close, these opportunities include various local involvements, such as groups of students finding themselves at the zoo on a whale watch, others wrapping up their areas of commitment with extracurriculars, such as the DECA students finding themselves at the Red Sox game last night. We have so many students working their best to find their education in a way that improves upon what they themselves value. So it's really nice that we're able to have these opportunities again, as we haven't been able to for the last 3 years. Overall, things are, just as we said last month, returning to the normal that we had hoped to see. But we are seeing this in a way that we hope is even further than what normal used to be. With all of these students having a way to make their education more individualized, as we have made over the last few years, So with the year drawing to a close, we have so many amazing students wrapping up what they wish to do in ways that are spread out all across the district with our across the district, as well as just keeping what Triton means to them, which is community. So I would like to take this time to just say thank you for such an amazing opportunity that the last 3 years have given me. And I hope that is a sentiment of all of the students that have found themselves represented by me. So we are greatly appreciative of the opportunity that we have had to have student voice be valued upon all of these within us. And I must admit that we are still currently looking at who was going to fill my shoes. I was under the impression that I was to be introducing to you today, but apparently we're still trying to find that perfect fit. So in the next month, we will be reading out that information to everyone, and we cannot wait to see how Triton student involvement continues to thrive within Triton. So goodbye, my fellow Tritonians.
Thank you again for your service, Kaylee. It has been our pleasure to have you serve as a student member of the committee. We also have a gift for you down at central office. If unfortunately, we're not there to present it to you in person, but you can go down and see Brian or Maureen Dunleavy and they'll give you your gift.
We can connect tomorrow. Absolutely.
Madam Chair, can we ask Haley where she's going next year?
Certainly.
So next year, I will be attending Castleton University. It's a small liberal arts school up in Vermont for technical theater and design.
Great.
Still trying to figure out what that minor is going to be, but definitely hoping that I can continue to have some level of involvement as I've been able to find at Triton.
Well, we look forward to see whatever it is that you do in the future. Well, the next item is new business. Would any members like to raise items for inclusion on a future agenda? The next item is summer programming update. Special Education Administrator Shannon Nolan will now review the programming to be held this summer.
So thank you. Thanks for having me update the committee on the summer programming. Before I begin, I just want to say that Sandy Susie works very, very hard on all of these programs, on staffing them, on students, and this program could not run without her. So I just want to make sure everyone knows how hard she works. I see it every day, and I'm actually learning from her to get this program going. So I just wanted to make sure that was known. So the program runs from July 5th through August 12th. It's 6 weeks. It runs Monday through Thursday. And the students, we have programs at all levels. We have a district-wide ESY preschool program, and this is for students throughout the district in preschool who have been identified as needing ESY, which is extended school year. And that's their special education team would identify that they're in need of this, and they go to Newbury Elementary School. And that runs from 8:30 to 11. And then we have the district-wide ESY elementary program, which is the same thing. It's just for students in K through 5. And that runs also at Newbury Elementary School, and it runs from 8:30 to 12:30. At Newbury Elementary School, we also have the ASD program and the program for students with complex medical needs. So those two programs run at Newbury Elementary from 8:30 to 1:30. And those are students also on their IEPs that it's identified, their teams identified that they're in need of of ESY services. We have the middle and high school ESY program, and that program runs either from 8 to 12 or 8 to 1. And those students, their team determines whether, how many hours they need, how many hours they'll stay within the program. That we also have the 18 to 22 program, which runs at the high school from 8 to 12. The middle school and the high school programs often do community events, and they often do things together throughout the summer. So, just promotes relationships amongst the students, it's social interactions. So they'll work together on a lot of things. The 18 to 22 program is always very busy. I know last summer they did a lot of community events. They still go and do karate. They do art activities. So I think it was last year they were out 2 days a week. So they're out in the community also. So all of the ESY programs, it's, the students continue to receive their IEP services. They participate, the students have a structured schedule, consistent. So it just continues throughout the summer. We also offer tutoring. So students who are just in need of either of small group tutoring in reading or math, those services happen at their home school. So it will happen in Salisbury, in Newbury, or in Rowley. So the tutoring services happen at their home school. We currently have, I did include the numbers for each program, but we're continuing to have annual meetings, reevaluations, initial meetings, and through those meetings, we will identify, the teams will determine students who need ESY. So we'll continue to enroll those students who are determined by their teams that need ESY. And we're hiring still for the programs, and we have a program coordinator who runs the program for us, and we'll check in with them. And so it ran very smoothly last year, and I'm sure this year it will run smoothly also.
And so if I can just jump in. So the second part of this is Shannon jumped to the second page for the special education program. Anna was not able to be here. No, that wasn't you. That was Anna's not able to be here, but to be able to jump in and just answer any questions about the information that's on the sheet, the first page and a half for summer programming that's not special education related. So we are running the SES Summer Learning, NES Superstars, and the PGS Peaks programs again. So those are grades 1 through 6. Again, this is not special education. This is targeted for students who are invited in, specifically inviting students who we believe are at risk. Remember, again, I should say last summer, we're going aggressively again to invite. Last summer, we had a hard time getting people to be interested. It was a very challenging year last year, as it has been this year. So I still do believe there's a strong sentiment of, no, I just need to walk away for 10 weeks, have a summer and come back. But we are still welcoming and inviting students in to participate in these programs. So those core programs at each of the 3 elementary schools will be similar to the way they were offered last year. There are summer book groups that are being run at Salisbury Elementary Schools. So that's between June 20th and July 29th. Anyone is open to be able to participate in that, and we'll have the book provided to them at no cost if they choose to participate. For Kids Club programming, which is generally before and after school programming, we are offering, it's kind of similar to like the town rec program, if you will. So it's more childcare, nothing academic. We are not able to staff a Newbury program for the summer. So later on in my superintendent's report, I have a note in there about trying to expand the program at Pine Grove based on need and at Newbury based on need. The issue is alive and well with staffing. We continue to struggle with staffing like every other industry. So we are offering the Pine Grove and the Salisbury program to any Newbury families who are interested. But we are not able to staff a Newbury Kids Club program. Again, that's a rec program throughout the course of the day. So that is still the plan, to be able to offer it at the other 2 and still offer it to Newbury families, but it won't be happening at Newbury Elementary. At the middle school, there's a little more detail that Anna shared with me that wasn't in this in the actual narrative. So the middle school is actually, again, targeting specific students and inviting them. So there's currently a list of 50 students that are going to be invited likely by the end of this week. They have an SEL focus. Actually, Dr. Mousseau, who we use for consulting, for training, for direct services, did some consultation in developing this program. It's going to be a 6-week program. They're going to have 6 themes. First week is forensic science, second week theater, then visual art, then horticulture, then woodworking, then crafting. And so there'll be a component, there'll be a combination of both academic and enrichment opportunities for those students. At the high school, the program will again focus on credit recovery. So for those students who weren't able to get credit for a course over the span of this past year, for whatever reasons, having the opportunity to take a course for credit recovery, which is not taking the entirety of the course, but using an online teaching platform with Triton educators, have an opportunity to get those credits back by taking that course over. They are also working on and hopefully trying to pull together, again, staffing is a challenge, but trying to pull together a bridge program for incoming freshmen. So that students who are transitioning from the middle school into the high school, again, particularly students who have been identified, known needs for whatever reason, that transition is going to be challenged to develop a program, and that is in the works as well. So we had hoped to be further along in this planning and staffing, but everyone's scrambling for the same people, and there's only so much people in the world. And I think that unfortunately, like students, educators are needing a break as well. So still working towards that, but that is the plan at this point. So happy to answer any questions, and Shannon, answer any questions about the special ed programs if you have them.
Marissa?
Thanks, Linda. So I'm very glad to see these programs back. I just had a few questions. I noticed that it notes the capacity for a lot of these programs, but doesn't for the kids club programs at Salisbury Elementary and Pine Grove. Do you know about how many openings there will be for those 2 programs?
So based on what we've had for traditional summer programming interest, the summer interest is significantly less than school year interest. And correct if I'm wrong, Kyle and Shannon, I remember these conversations, is that we don't believe there'll be any issue accommodating anyone who's interested in kids club programming, including Newbury students who might choose to go to Pine Grove or Salisbury. So Kyle's nodding. He remembers that conversation.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the conversation with Anna. So we would have the staffing capacity, and then the space is much less of an issue in the summer.
Okay, all right. And I know you talked about, kind of the putting it all out there last year and then having as much interest as was anticipated. Is there a plan to do like a second round of invitations this year or anything like that? Because obviously you have the capacity in a lot of these programs that are listed, but and I'd like to, we should maximize our investment.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if we did that somewhat last summer, ran out of time more so last year, but yes, if by invitation the programs don't fill up, then it would be open to a larger group, depending on the program. If it's a more specialized and intense program, that it wouldn't be right for all students, but certainly providing opportunity for other students, yes. And then ultimately, if they don't fill up, then we wouldn't run them, but certainly do everything we can to cap out. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And one last question. Just looking at the tutoring numbers, I was trying to kind of apply the usual mental math where we expect to see sort of a certain percentage of the student enrollment represented in numbers like that. It seems like either Pine Grove is really large or Salisbury Elementary is really small based on their enrollment. Is there something going on there? I guess I'm just curious if you have any idea. Is it just random that happened to be the students that were identified, or is there a gap at Pine Grove, or kind of a I don't want to say lack of gap, but some sort of, like there was just such a stellar program at Salisbury Elementary over the year that you just don't have as many students that need tutoring. Any idea?
So the tutoring for special education you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is determined by the teams and it's determined by students. The students have to show that they need it to prevent substantial regression over the summer. So it's something to look into and to find out why are the numbers so different. But yeah, it's so individualized and it's determined by the team. So nobody has come to me and said, the reason we have all these kids that need tutoring is because of this, but it's definitely something to dig a little deeper about.
Okay. All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I do think historically the summer program, the elementary summer program is run at Newbury. So I don't know this as a fact, but I wouldn't be shocked if there are more Newbury students who end up getting referred to that program within their own building rather than tutoring separately. So I don't know that that's the case, but that is a factor that the program actually is run. All elementary students are brought to Newbury for the summer for this program.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any question? Paulise?
Yeah, Shannon, can you tell us how many people are going to be working as summer interns? Because I'm looking at Brian's staffing sheet at the back of his report. Do you have a number?
How many staff that we've hired so far?
Yeah,
I don't have a number exactly. I've just signed like 3 papers today hiring staff. I can get that to you for sure to see where we stand right now. We're towards the end for staffing. We've done pretty well. Right now we're looking for IAs really to fill positions, but I can get the exact number of where we are for you.
is that number tied to the amount of kids that are actually going to attend it all?
Yeah, a lot of students already have one-to-ones in their IEPs, so we have to hire IAs to cover those one-to-ones. They may have a high level of support, so that's usually 1-on-2. So yeah, we absolutely have to look at what their needs are and determine the number of staff we need.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I was gonna say if you're looking at the personnel reports, I don't know, maybe February might be too soon, but certainly March, April, and May, it's been months of those hires. So you would see those summer programming folks popping up over the past few months.
Is there any other questions? I just have one, Shannon. The staffing that you have, is the staffing for what you have now, or is it if you get more students in these programs, will you have to continue to hire more staff?
Yeah, if we get a student who has a one-to-one, or, if it's identified in that way, then yeah, we would have to find a staff member to cover that one-to-one or a high level of support. But if the students are just enrolled in ESY, but they're in the classroom with the teacher, we wouldn't have to hire more staff unless it put us over a number that we needed another IA in the room. So we're constantly looking at that as to what's needed.
And all of these, if they're in Salisbury or Newbury or Rowley, there's busing available for all of these students to go where they need to go?
Yes, yeah, we work with transportation to transport them. Like I said, the tutoring is in their home schools, but if they go to Newbury Elementary, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
The next item is the superintendent's evaluation. The time is coming for the superintendent's annual evaluation. Our evaluation process is more comprehensive than that required by DESE in order to provide better and more meaningful feedback to the superintendent. You will be asked to respond to a number of questions about the superintendent's general conduct, as well as rate his progress towards his 3 goals. We will get that survey out to you after the meeting and ask that you submit your responses by May 31st. Those will be condensed into a document for the June 8th meeting. DESE recommends that the document be used as a basis for discussion that will then result in the final evaluation report to be submitted to the state. The superintendent will now take us through the evidence he is providing.
All right, thank you, Linda. So in your packet is a several page PDF document as Linda mentioned, there is a SurveyMonkey link right on that first page of the document. Even created a QR code for those of you mobile users. It's 40 some odd. I don't remember exactly questions, but you'll be evaluating me both on my progress towards my goals, which is obviously things are a narrative that I'm sharing with you tonight. And then the standards are addressed by 40 some odd individual questions ranging from across the 4 or 5 rather standards. So for the goals, it's exceeded, met, made significant progress, some progress, or did not meet the goal. That's how you're going to rate the 3 goals that I had written at the beginning of the year. So the first goal was a student learning goal, and the goal itself was to continue to develop and refine the instructional opportunities and experience for our students, specifically those that may have been impacted by the pandemic closure, to provide the supports and services necessary to ensure their success. So I'm not going to read through that whole document, which is the second page, but the evidence was a plan for changes to that we were going to be making for those services for students. The actual programming being provisioned for in the operating in the operating budget, and also we had identified the provision and planning for the Chromebook initiative that was started through the pandemic with one-time funds. So I noted here, and I'm not going to read this, so I'm going to try and paraphrase, and certainly I'm happy to answer any questions. I will also say this, I was writing this through COVID, so I think it's clear, but if there's a little COVID haze through that, please let me know and I can clarify some things for you. So I did want to acknowledge, part of this was certainly a concerted effort to plan for and put some of these supports in place. I also have to give a nod to a little bit of luck, right? In that we've, over the past couple of years, given the things that were unfortunate with not being able to fill staffing or what have you, we found ourselves in a very different budget standing than we were 3, 4, 5 years ago. So some of the things that we've been able to add into the budget are because of some very deliberate planning on our part, and then others are it worked out well and in our favor. So I want to make sure we acknowledge that. So we have added supports this year. We have tended to add supports on a kind of consultation or contract service basis this year. But I noted, I'm not going to rehash this. This is all what we spent the months of January, March, or February, March talking about. We were able to add significant supports as we go into next year between the elementary with additional reading supports, mental health supports, a social emotional educator, a dedicated STEM educator at the elementary level, a high school career counselor, which is something that Patrick Kelly, the principal of the high school, had proposed as a significant need. Additional social worker to be shared between Newbury and Pine Grove, and also an additional special educator at Salisbury. So significant supports were able to be added. That's what we had envisioned and hoped. And I'm thrilled, again, through a combination of planning and luck, that we were able to put those into the long-term operating budget without providing an overly burdensome impact to the towns. The second piece of that was the Chromebook initiative. And so as we said, we took a giant leap forward through the pandemic, providing a device to every student. We now have in the budget the funding for year 1, which is $50,000. We need to do that 3 more years so that we ultimately have a $200,000 line that allows us to provide a new device every 4 years for students. So starting in 1st grade, students will get a device. They'll keep it for 4 years, get a new device in 5th grade, keep it for 4 years, get a new device in 9th grade. Those will be on a lease refresh. So that provides both current technology to students, but it also allows us to adapt as the technology changes. Right now, it's Chromebooks. In 5 years or 4 years, it may not be Chromebooks. Maybe it's something that doesn't exist today. We don't know. So certainly pleased that we're able to fund that first year and have a plan now moving forward that gets us on track with a sustainable one-to-one initiative rather than one that is supported by one-time funds. I did note there too that we haven't said the perfect solution for preschool and kindergarten is a Chromebook. Certainly we have a lot of iPad and Apple devices at that level. And so we're not we're not talking about a one-to-one at that level. And so we're reassessing that as we speak. And within the budget, we would have the capacity to address that need for those grade levels within the schools. Goal 2 is my professional practice goal, which was to improve the overall perception and understanding of the value of a full pre-K through 12 trade and education, and to develop a full understanding of the role that addressing the needs for repairs and improvements at the middle and high school campus plays in that process. So we had the 2 parts to this, which was addressing the needs, identifying the needs, and building consensus. These were the kind of the evidence that we have a plan in place for the middle school, high school campus. And second to that, it was having a formal marketing strategy developed. I think as I noted here, I think we've arrived with the first step with an understanding and a plan for the middle school and high school. We've arrived at a place that was better than I had anticipated if I look back a year ago and knowing what the needs were and trying to build understanding, capacity, and agreement with the towns so that they understand that this isn't a quick solution, nor is it a cheap solution. So through that process that we undertook starting in August with a presentation of that Habib and Associates report, to the decision to make that a joint presentation to the school committee along with the select boards and the finance committees or warrant advisory committees at the same time. So no one had information that the other party didn't have. A decision you would make first as a committee member, but obviously the towns will ultimately have to work with us and figure out the funding on. I think that process went incredibly well, and ultimately it landed with the school or each of the select boards taking a vote to support the district submitting a statement of interest. That was not required, nor was it actually, I don't believe it was ever requested that they take a vote, but it certainly was appreciated, I know, on my part and our part, as we look forward, or as we're working forward to make sure that we're on the same page with our towns in helping address this issue. So did submit a statement of interest March 29th, had hired one consultant to help us do some of that planning and visioning. I think we wrote a compelling statement of interest, perhaps dramatic at times, but right, it's about getting the interest of the state and getting their attention to make sure they understand the full breadth of the issues. So we have a long way to go. We certainly are not in Kansas with regard to a solution for the campus, but we're waiting to hear back, and we would know by December whether or not we're invited to the next step. So I think if it were just that part as the evidence that I had outlined, I would have said met or exceeded. The second piece of that was the discussion around marketing and developing a marketing strategy. Ironically, I was just reading about Amesbury was doing something similar and pulled it out of their budget. I've met with several marketing firms, several that I was very interested in working with, and they didn't have the capacity to work with us. The first step in this process is clearly an assessment, and it's an assessment of what are the perceptions of the district, and not just good, bad, or otherwise, but why? What is it that folks believe we do well? What is it folks believe we could do better? And then having a strategy to make those improvements before we start marketing. So I made great progress at the beginning of this, and then life took over. And so I haven't gotten to the point of being able to work with a group to figure out the next step with that assessment. We do know we have to work with Massachusetts procurement law. One of the things I noted here is that certainly marketing is far more expensive than I understood. So it's the plan that we came up with in discussions between this group, the committee, internally with administrators, and even the DCC had a discussion about the next step. And certainly it's contracting to assess first and then set a strategy forward. So the goal will be to use one-time funds to complete that assessment. But I have not made any further progress on that at this time. And the final goal was a district improvement to begin the work of assessing our collective practices to ensure we are inclusive of all individuals, equitable in our words and language, our process and decision-making, and the overall opportunities and experiences we offer our students and staff. This work of diversity, equity, inclusion of all individuals will be a multi-year effort, but we'll make a considerable start on that work this year. I had initially envisioned having an equity team rolling by this year. I've had a lot of time, or we've been working with two groups, Culture 7, Michael Eatman is a consultant, and then also Nadia Brock of Essential Partners. Essential Partners tends to be more, their work is about dialogue and facilitating effective dialogue. They're not the content people. In working with Michael Eatman, the approach, I want to make sure that we're approaching this discussion authentically, but effectively. And I think that there's, right, this is a huge hot button issue. And so rather than jumping right into race or gender identity or you name it, we've been attacking this, if you will, from an angle of culture, in that we're all different, and that this is about appreciating, understanding, and respecting differences. So the work that's happened this year is certainly a lot slower than I anticipated at the get-go, but I'm very appreciative of the fact that it's much slower, because the work that's been done this year has been about building capacity for me to lead this work in a way that I think is effective. And then also building the capacity of the kind of the core leadership team and the district-wide leadership team. So I've spent hours and hours with Michael. He has then spent a few different meetings with the full district and district-wide leadership team. And then he's also met with each of the individual schools, principals and assistant principal teams to talk about equity, to talk about what we believe equity looks like and what it does not. And so I think there are districts that jump right out and hire equity officers and hire a person of color, and then it just becomes about race. And so I think, being very strategic here, that this isn't about any one thing that makes us unique. It's about everything that makes us unique, and approaching it from that perspective. And so Michael's been very helpful in that regard. And so the plan would be, so as far as the way the goal's written, no, did not meet the goal. As far as the learning that was achieved, I would say I have a better understanding of my capacity and ability to lead this work than I even envisioned when writing that goal. So the next step is certainly to have a much broader reach. Michael will continue the work. He's going to be working with the leadership team over the summer at one of our retreat days, continuing to align us so that we can lead the work. He can't come in and lead the work, right? He can come in as a Black man and be a consultant, but if he's leading the work, that's not us. That's not the fabric of this district. So his job and his belief is about developing us as leaders to lead these discussions in this work. So on paper, did not meet the goal, but certainly made great progress that wasn't anticipated. So I'm going to stop there. That is my thought as far as self-reflection on the goals. Again, I don't provide you any self-reflection on the standards per se, but happy to answer questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions for Brian? Okay. The
Paul
next
raised his
item.
hand.
I just
Paul
had
raised his hand.
one observation I wanted to
Oh,
make.
sorry, Paul.
So Brian, I think I disagree with you about goal 3. You had said that, it obviously wasn't met on paper. And I don't really see it that way, because in your goal, you outline that it's a multi-year effort. And I think the key to this is just awareness. Okay. And I think this first year, there's just been incredible awareness in the district. And I think that's a good starting point. So I just wanted to make that observation.
I appreciate that, Paul. I try to be as accurate as possible. I choose the words in August or September when I write these, so I try to live by them. But I agree with you. I feel like, I certainly met the goal for me personally. If this is about me and my growth, then the goal was certainly met as far as the capacity that was developed with my ability to lead. So again, just to clarify, you taking that link at the top, whether you're a QR clicker or a SurveyMonkey, that SurveyMonkey link, sorry, I'm done talking. That link for SurveyMonkey, however you choose to access it, will walk you right through the entirety of this. So that this document is not, actually might be linked up there too. But if you have this, as far as my reflection on the goals, Everything else is right there within the survey. And it will ask you to rate me on each of the goals. And then on through, and then that information will be collected by and synthesized by Narissa and Linda, or I should say Linda and Caitlin, or maybe Linda's already delegating, or Caitlin's already delegating to whoever. Linda's in charge, but Linda will synthesize it and get it back to you to review in June. And I think you did say the date, Linda. You said you wanted it. You had me put it in here, May 31st. So that's the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend. If you can have that. The June meeting is early. It's actually June 8th or 9th. So if you can have that by May 31st, that gives them the time to synthesize. Thank you.
Yes, so again, if you can get your responses to me by May 31st, that would be helpful. Does anybody else have any questions for Brian? Okay, sorry, Brian, but you're up again.
All right.
Superintendent's report. Brian will provide his monthly report.
Okay, I will make this brief. So COVID update. Is Kaylee still here? She totally jinxed us last month when she said it's starting to feel normal. 100%, 100%. So I actually, about the same time this meeting was starting, scheduled a message to go out to the high school. The high school has been particularly hit hard over the last week. So far, there were 47 cases as the time I wrote that message. In the last 7 days, there's another 20 who are symptomatic and close contacts for outside, nothing having to do with in school, presumed to be positive. So we're talking about, close to 70 people in a week's time. I didn't implement a mask mandate, but I'm just putting out the APB to the high school staff, families, students, everyone to just encourage you to mask if you're so inclined. If you have anything, if you got the sniffles, stay home, call the doctor, talk to the school nurse. Because if we keep at this pace, unfortunately, we are going to not have any staff to come in, and we will have to close down for a week. And the last day of school will not be on June 17th for the high school. So that's not a threat. This is just a please help us. So across the rest of the district, same uptick, right? Same uptick that is being seen by everyone. I know at the state numbers, they kind of crept up, and it seems like they've fallen off a little bit the last day or two. But there is certainly an uptick. It's been much more manageable at all 4 of the other schools. So by way of an update, that's where we are. Someone's hand just went up. Narissa, did you have a question about that?
Yeah, I think it's tangential to that, Brian. So in one of the past superintendent's reports, you talked about how we have a number of staff members who had put off of some sort, and that we had a number of short-term and long-term subs that were covering for those teachers. Can you just update us on the substitute situation? Because obviously we already knew we had a shortage. Some of them are now devoted to covering those planned treatments, and now we have staff out due to COVID cases.
Yes, I don't know. I don't believe we've added a whole lot more subs. I know I've signed some letters, so we have added some, which is always a positive. I don't know if you have any exact details to add, Kyle.
Not an exact amount, but a handful of additional staff members, and then the utilizing instructional assistants to cover classes as well. That's been an uptick in utilizing that employee source.
Yeah, and then I would say at the high school or where it becomes a not an advisory, but a study, a monitored study. That is certainly, there's been several days over the course of the last week where that I'm sure Kaylee could say, maybe not as a senior, but several classes where multiple classes were in the auditorium or in the library being covered by a sub because there just aren't the bodies, for sure. So continues to be a challenge. We've been able to cover it. That might mean that a principal's in a classroom or secretaries are in a classroom, but it's happening.
Okay. And my other question was, given that there are obviously student absences and staff absences going on this year or right now, I know that that in the past, the high school has looked at changing up or doing things with finals because of the difficulty of both learning material and teaching material. Are there any considerations being looked at this year for that, for due to these absences? I know it's sometimes not always easy to get caught up on material.
Yep.
If a student is out for 5 days, and obviously, you know, if a staff member is out as well.
Yeah, so I know that was discussed at the high school level. And at this point, finals are planned as, or going on as planned, as originally intended. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kaylee,
I would just like to say that there is a large number of seniors that are incredibly concerned about the state of finals right now, because for us, they happen next week. And a lot of us have had days where we have only had one of our teachers been in. So we've been in the cafeteria or the auditorium for the majority of our day. So it is concerning the students right now, because it's a large number of the juniors and seniors will all take that final together if it's in a multi-grade level.
Yes, I would say yes. You definitely speak for the masses. That's not the only one I know, and I know that's an ongoing discussion. But I think at this point there wasn't a better solution in place at this point.
Could I just ask that you keep us up to date on both substitute capacity and kind of the plans that the high school accommodate based on absences? Thank you.
For sure.
I have a question. It's about the buses. I know, Kyle, you've been doing a great job of sending out the mass amount of emails of bus shortages, and has there been any problems with getting students to school because of all the bus shortages?
It's been challenging for sure. So like you've probably, a number of you have seen in the emails, when a bus driver isn't available to run the normal routes, the in-house, they'll try and cover the route first, or there's the terminal staff, or the area manager has been driving bus routes every single day. So if that's not able to be covered, then we have to merge the routes. So certainly there's been challenges with the buses being delayed. I have gotten a couple parent emails about the delays specifically, but haven't gotten any notices of students being missed entirely. So it's I'd say to the level that we experienced in the late winter right now. It was a little bit of a hiatus last week, not too bad. Then this week has been pretty challenging again. But yeah.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to you for all the hard work that you do
Yes.
with the bus company, because I can see how challenging it is.
For
That was
sure.
the only question.
Happy to help. Thank you.
So I would say yes, thank you. And yes, it's ridiculous, the stuff he's doing at 5:45 in the morning. But the question is, just to confirm, the issue isn't about permanent staffing any longer. This is about absences because of illness, right? So back in the winter, we didn't have people. So now we're fully staffed. Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for mentioning that. Fully staffed, all of our routes, all of the delays and combos you're seeing is because staff are out on either a short-term level or honestly COVID, things like that.
I just want to mention one more thing. I think it has to be said that when we were during COVID, Brian and Kyle made a conscious decision to make sure that we continued to pay our drivers. And I think overall that has helped to make sure that we continue to be staffed fully. So I want to say thanks to both of you for having foresight to make sure that we've done that.
You're very welcome, but thank you for being willing to pay the bills, right? I mean, you as a committee had to approve that, right? You could have fought back, and there were school committees who shut it down. And that I agree with you fully. We made the right decision collectively. and it's not it's not a dreamy job right now for Kyle, but it could be a whole lot worse. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Any other questions? This is it.
Are
for the
you
rest
done
of-
with your report, Brian? Or are you still going?
I just a couple more things, unless you
Okay.
want me to be done.
No, I have questions though. Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
On the rest of the report or on that one?
The rest of it.
Okay, so website, district website, we had gone 3 years down the path with a company that has changed hands 3 times. And ultimately, the company that we're currently left with is not the same company, literally and figuratively, and it's not been the same experience. So after trying for a good long time, we're parting ways with that company. I've partnered with a new group called School Blocks, smaller company, not as, I would say, not as sexy and, perfect, looks like the $1 million website, but is just usable, functional, syncs with Google Drive and all of the information that we have and the access, and it's going to make a real simple and accessible website. Our website is not ADA compliant, and everything about this new site, the compliance from an ADA perspective or adapting to a mobile device, accessing documents, resources, it's going to be a far better experience and for the same price that we would have been paying on an annual basis for the other company. So they said an 8 to 10 week turnaround time. So we're, after committing this past week, we're looking that we would be ready to launch this in September. I think I've said that for 3 Septembers now. So at least 2. So this September, we're really launching a website. End of year events, that's a repeat from last year. Nope, from last week, last month. Sorry. Just to make sure you have that, and also to note that that senior awards night on June 1st is a new format. Senior awards used to be part of the all school awards on that Friday, very long event. So there's been some talk for quite a while about making it almost, it was like a baccalaureate service the night before graduation, but rather than the Friday before, it's going to be the Wednesday night before graduation, June 1st. So that's for seniors, families, everyone's invited. Obviously, anyone receiving an award would certainly be directly invited. Early retirement bill, this was actually a question that someone asked. It's good to bring to your attention, but I don't believe there's any progress. So Senate Bill 2783 was actually a Massachusetts Teachers Association bill. I don't want to say a lot other than it's an early retirement incentive. So this started 2 years ago with the thought of, if folks retire this summer, the summer of 22, they would have the ability to buy back additional years of creditable service that don't exist, or age, so years of their life. It would be significant cost. It could be, if someone's buying 5-10 years, it could be 150,000, 200,000 for that individual to buy that time, but it might make a big difference in their ability to retire early. So it's had many iterations over the course of the last 18 months. So it did make it through Ways and Means, and the Senate Ways and Means. I don't know that it's emerged. I'm still waiting to hear. I was asking the MASS legislative aide to see if she could find some more details, and then she hasn't got a lot of details, but it did go into Ways and Means with some tweaks. One of them being that the district has to cover the cost of 20% of the bought back years. So I guess I would say to you, I don't know how that happens at this point now here on May 18th, when the retirements have to happen by August of 22. If you've got 10 people that have to pay $100,000 and we would have to pay 20,000 of it, we don't have 200,000 sitting around to be able to pay for that. So I think there has to be some tweaks that if this is going to be considered, it would have to be for a future year. But it is still sitting there. It would have to be accepted. It's not universal. So if it would be an early retirement incentive that's offered, if a participating district votes, you as the school committee vote to accept that act. Again, I don't have anything clear because it's not law yet, but just wanted to provide an update to you. I know some folks had asked that question, and that's what we know at this point. It certainly has more clarity around it now than it has in the last year and a half, but it certainly doesn't seem like something that's actually going to get pulled off this summer. Kids Club, specifically, I mentioned earlier, Pine Grove School, Camp Cedar Mill in Rowley, which has been run by the YMCA, is closing down its after-school program. That is creating a significant challenge for Pine Grove families. We didn't have the capacity, like we've been saying all along across the board, like every other industry, finding people is the issue. It's not finding space. We certainly can expand the program as long as we can expand our Kids Club workers. So we're working diligently to try and do that. That is proving to be hard. So we're communicating with families. There hasn't been any increased need in Salisbury. Salisbury families have been pretty consistent with either choosing Kids Club at the school or the Boys and Girls Club, which is right there in town. Newbury, there was some increased request over the course of the year, and we figured out how to tweak that. The numbers at Pine Grove were just much larger because of the closure of Camp Cedar Mill. So still trying to find a solution for that. Hopeful that we might be able to for the fall, but there's certainly nothing that we can promise because we can't run the program if we don't have the staff to maintain the ratios that we need to maintain. So we are using high school students. We call them counselors in training, CITs, and they are wonderful. They are great resources, but they're great resources to work with other counselors or staff folks because we can't necessarily leave a high school student alone supervising elementary students based on the requirements for running those programs. So, and then the last thing on that page, last day of school, barring anything crazy, is currently Friday, June 17th. So just to remind you, anything that happens prior to April 1st, we make up, and you have to have 180 days in prior to June 30th, even if you're going over vacations and Saturdays. Between April 1st and June 1st, you have to make up all days until you hit your 185th day. So our 185th day would be, skip the following week to Juneteenth, so it'd be 23rd, 24th, 25th. I think I wrote it here. Which would be 23rd, sorry. And so as long as we make it to June 1st, which is 2 weeks now, then we don't have to make up any additional days that occur or any closures we had beyond June 1st. So at this point, I'm fairly confident the final day will be on June 17th, but that can't be confirmed until June 1st. Should I stop there? Were there questions on anything I've said so far, or do you want to wait till the end? I know, Paul, you had a question. Okay, Paul.
So, Brian, on this early retirement bill, who's the proponent of this and what is the theory behind it?
So I believe the MTA officially filed, or I mean, obviously they found sponsors to file the bill. The theory behind it was for those teachers, educators, I should say, not just classroom teachers, who are part of Mass Teachers Retirement System, which is all DESE licensed, whether you're a superintendent, a principal, a teacher, or a reading specialist. Anyone who was close to retirement age and COVID had a severe impact on them and they wanted to retire, this would be motivation for them to do that and allowing them to do that. So again, so for my retirement, I pay 11% of my salary into my retirement. I'm not going to get Social Security. So I pay my 11% in, the state matches the 11%. The formula for determining a retirement pension is based on years of service, creditable service, and your age. So those are the two key factors. So you can't retire until you're at least 10 years in and at least age 55. And so someone who might be towards the capping out their retirement, if you will, those final years, 2 years of purchased age and or creditable service could make a big difference in the retirement percentage and be the piece that motivates them to do that. Again, it would not be short dollars, because if you're buying a year of service, you're paying in your 11% of your salary for those years. And if you were to buy a year plus a year of service plus a year of your age, it's can get exponential. There was some examples that the MTA put out there where, you know, it could cost someone 140,000. But if they, I'm making this up now, but if they paid in the 140,000, their pension for the rest of their life could increase by 30,000, which over the course of a lifetime would make a lot of sense. So it's certainly not an easy thing for either an educator to come up with the money to purchase the years. But the I don't know where, I don't know who there was a commission or a committee not having to do with, I think it was a public service committee that reviewed it and came up with the requirement that cities or towns pay 20% of the cost. And then, you know, you as a committee would have to buy in. So it's not, there's no clear law that shows exactly what the requirements are, but that's my understanding of the history.
And just one last question on that, Brian. Is it your understanding that the school committee would have the right to accept or reject the implementation of that state statute if it got passed?
That is my understanding. Yep, the way it's written. Yep. Due to the fact that you would be required to pay 20%, you would have the right to participate or not participate in that early retirement program. Which, if they decided that right now for next year, piece of cake. Easy to model that out and cost it out and figure out how to make it happen. Doing that, you know, in the next few weeks to implement a month later is just near impossible. I think exciting questions. So just continuing on Pine Grove School renovation update, we're back to that. So just to let you know that Nicola Perrier, the principal, Narissa, and I went to the Raleigh Select Board, I believe that was last week, to just start a discussion. When that school was renovated, part of the motivation to make sure the MSBA reimbursed us for the whole school was to turn classrooms into these extended learning areas. I know several of you have had a tour of the building, beautiful learning areas, shared spaces at each grade level. The enrollments and the projections were not enough to justify them paying to renovate 4 classrooms at every grade level. The concern was raised, obviously, what happens if enrollments do go up? But ultimately, it was more cost beneficial to get the full MSBA reimbursement to renovate the building and then go back, and those spaces were designed in a way that they can easily, quote unquote, obviously not an overnight project, but somewhat easily be turned back into classrooms. So, so we have a meeting next week with the designer of the school to start that discussion, to just talk about, as we're looking at kindergarten enrollments, we're high this year in the upper 60s. We're already into the mid upper 60s, and likely with move-ins going to be up into the 70s. That we're moving back towards a solid 4 sections per grade level, slowly but consistently. So that's not a need we would have next year, but in the year beyond and possibly further, that's a discussion that has to happen. So so we are starting that discussion. That is not a school committee decision. Ultimately, it is funded by the town, so that would be something we would work through, keep you updated, and bring back to the select board for approval. And then finally, there's certainly the personnel report, standard update on the reporting on the dashboard, which has been busier than usual lately. Any other questions? I see Paul Goldner's hands.
Paul Goldner, yeah.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I know we were talking about large numbers for Newberry Elementary for kindergarten as well. Do we know what those numbers are looking like now for kindergarten in Newberry?
I don't have a current update for you, but I believe we're up to a 4th section at Pine Grove, 3 and 3 potentially moving back towards 4 at Salisbury and Newbury as well. Salisbury tends to be the latest as far as solidifying the numbers. They tend to the census doesn't tend to be as accurate, and families just kind of continue coming into the school to register throughout the summer. But both Newbury and Pine Grove were continuing to grow as well. So I don't have an update. I can get that for you, certainly.
And we were also talking about, I think, some larger pre-K enrollments or expectations. Are those materializing as well?
They are. We ended up adding I think it was, is it Pine Grove? We were adding additional sections, or was it Newbury as well? Do you remember, Kyle?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top. of
It's
my head.
happening daily, but yes, those
Yes.
numbers continue to rise across the district as well.
It's a positive sign maybe for the
Yes.
enrollment numbers.
Yep. And just so that you're all aware, we're very articulate in the budget about budgeting for grades 1 through 12 with class sizes. Kindergarten tends to be a crapshoot. Historically, we balanced that off with full day K funding because we were tuition based. Now that we're not, that's certainly something that right now we have the capacity to be able to address that with other reserves. But I believe we're still where we thought we would be within the budget as far as enrollments, and then preschool where we're adding tuition, students paying tuition. So it certainly it covers the cost there. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
I will make a motion to receive and file the May 2022 superintendent's report as presented.
Could I have a
I will
second?
second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Aaron,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes,
Caitlin,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Paulise,
Yes,
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. The next item is the NEASC report acceptance. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, the NEASC report will be moved to the June business meeting. And I will hand that to Brian.
So just that he made it public, Patrick is dealing with COVID. And so given I think the importance of this report, I mean, this is certainly, I don't know if you had a chance to read it for tonight's meeting. It's not the most perfectly and eloquently formatted report. It's a report that spits out of the NEASC accreditation system. But it hits on some really pertinent commendations and recommendations. And I know these are things that Patrick has been talking about since his arrival 3 years ago. Certainly, is it about 70% of Patrick's time here has been COVID era. And I think now as we are hopefully, I want to say it again, Kaylee, hopefully getting back to normal-ish, I think this is it's an important time to have, she's got the fingers crossed, an important time to have those conversations. And so as much as Patrick was trying to be here, I said, no, let's do it. Let's give it the right time, the right discussion, so that you can ask the questions that you have about the report. Even on down to, I think I mentioned this, there was a big debate about the US News and World Report rankings. And I think even within, not that I believe that ranking system is a viable ranking systems, but it should cause us to ask questions. And I think that's something that even within this report, the NEASC report, it speaks to things where I believe improvements, and Patrick believes, and teachers believe improvements can and should be made. So we want to make sure that has good time for discussion with you and questions to be asked, and talk about how we're going to make those improvements.
so question, comment? Linda?
I think she said yes.
Okay, so Brian, I just think it would be helpful for the younger members of the committee next month, if you could just give a history of NEASC and how it's changed in probably the last dozen years, because there was a time that it really had a certain understanding, and then it tweaked in the mid 20-teens. And if you could just, as a prelude to when Patrick gives us the presentation in June, it might be helpful.
Yeah, and I can't even share that quickly now. I think it was, and that was during Christopher Farmer's time, where that was all transpiring. People were leaving NEASC. NEASC is New England Association of Schools and Colleges. So NEASC accredits all secondary and higher education institutions in New England. High schools, private, colleges, public, private. And so they went through a metamorphosis. They had a completely separate process of standards and accreditation requirements. And it was completely separate from the work we were doing to identify our goals, school improvement planning. And so there were a lot of schools, public, private, that were walking away. And so NEASC, to their credit, listened. And so they've basically revamped, streamlined their standards, and they basically come in and look at what they have their standards for sure. But they come in and look at what we've identified as our goals and our areas of needed improvement and say, agree, disagree. And then there's a whole collaborative conference where those areas of focus are identified. That happened 2.5 years ago. They then say, okay, here's what you're going to work on. They come in to do that decennial visit, and then kicks off another 10-year cycle. So just to note, we remained fully accredited, even though we jumped out of the process like many other high schools. If you notice in the letter, it's due to go, the report as written by the visiting committee is due to go to the NEASC board in June. But every report, every discussion has been that they fully expect that. There's no reason why we wouldn't maintain our accreditation. It would just be a matter of formally having them accept it.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Brian? Okay, moving on to the draft letter to the commissioner. As discussed in past meetings, the Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee has been working on an advocacy letter to Commissioner Riley. Paul Goldner is now going to walk us through their draft.
So we've been with a couple of drafts, and we started with a very long one that we've since winnowed down to a few bullet points that we think address kind of the key areas of difficulty that we had with looking for ways that the Board of Education can improve their communication to school committees and provide information that's more helpful for us when they're decision making. So a couple when we were here last month, there were a couple of suggestions and tweaking the language, which we tried to implement, and then we took a pass at it for verb tensing and all of that. And over the last weekend, we took one more look at it to make sure that it seemed solid to us in terms of the readability. But this is very similar to what we had last month with some tweaking of those first couple of bullet points, just to be more clear with what we were asking, I think. So I guess at this point, we feel we have something that is sendable and are sort of asking the committee if you agree. So if there's any questions about it, I'm happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, we'd be asking for your permission to send it.
Motion.
Yep, oh, I saw Narissa hand. And then.
Yep. So I actually thought that you guys were just going to tweak the language and go with it. I think this is getting less relevant as it goes on. So I would say, even if it's not perfect, you guys, I think you need to get it out the door because, right, we're moving. I don't want to say past that time because I think these lessons are always relevant, but they're, the impetus, I would say, is growing less as time goes on to get something like this out.
I'd like to say, I think it's a good product and I think we should get it out. Because we really struggled during the whole time of COVID with what the state was doing to us. And I think it's important to get the message out there.
Okay, I think you have the approval of the committee. I don't think we have to, do we have to vote on it? No.
My next question would be, do you want me to send this along for everybody to sign individually, or should I sign it as the chair of policy and advocacy and send it?
I think it's probably best that you sign it as the chair of the policy and advocacy and send it off.
Okay.
I think Linda needs to sign it because you're sending it on behalf of the whole committee, right?
Okay.
So send it off to me and I will sign it along with you, Paul.
Okay.
And I want to thank the Policy and Advocacy Committee for the time and effort that you put into this. Because it was a long 3 years and Department of Ed sometimes didn't give us the quickest and best guidance at the time that we needed it.
Okay, that's it on that then. I'll have this to you tomorrow, Linda.
Okay. The next item is the FY21 audit review. School Business Administrator Kyle Warren is going to take us through the audit.
Excellent. Yeah, happily cue this one up. So attached to this agenda item is 3 different documents. The financial statements, all for FY21, which is the year ending June 30th, 2021. There's the audited financial statements, the schedule of federal awards, and the management letter. We hire Roselli Clark and Associates, who's an independent audit firm, to audit these financial statements, as well as audit the schedule of federal awards, and then they issue the management letter, which contains their recommendation. The process associated with this goes across takes place over the course of a couple months. We send them all of our accounting ledgers, all of the support for our balance sheet. They select a series of revenue, expense, payroll transactions for testing purposes. For our grants, we send the applications, what we spend the money on, and then they check it for various compliance procedures. So there's a ton of work associated with this on their end, as well as our end. I have to say, Karen Denon, as well as our finance staff, everybody involved, not even just the purely financial people, but the grant program administrators as well. Sarah Litton and Anna Bates. It's just everybody involved feeds into this process. So thank you to all of them for that hard work. So starting with the financial statements first, this document has at the beginning, a auditor's opinion, which is unmodified, is what it's called, which the best you can get means there were no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and everything in the report is presented as required by generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, as it's called. In terms of format, you have that auditor's report opinion right at the beginning. The next section, starting on pages 3 to 9, is the MD&A, the management discussion and analysis. That's the cliff notes of sorts. So if you don't look at the whole report, just read that, and it gives you the highlights, top level, what's involved in the report and how operations went. After that are the financial statements, where it gets real fun. There's 3 levels of financial statements because governments are different than businesses and corporations. There's a full accrual financial statement, a fund-based financial statement, and then agency funds as well. But basically, they take our accounting records and then they layer on various accruals, various long-term liabilities, long-term assets. So our records are the base that we maintain here at the district, but then the audit firm adds all of those other items in to come up with these financial statements. And then towards the back, you have the footnotes that give various in-depth information on assortment of accruals like OPEB, pensions, assets. And then at the end is required supplementary information, which is just a series of charts, largely the OPEB and pension liabilities, to give comparative analysis over a long-term, multi-year basis. That said, some highlights there on the financial statements. Looking at the full accrual financial statements, which I'd say is a top level long-term perspective. Again, it's our base records, all long-term liabilities and assets. Starts on page 10 is a balance sheet, and then page 11 is like a profit and loss statement almost, or that's a bad word to say, revenue and expense. Important to highlight that on page 10 there, at the bottom, it shows our net position as a deficit of $87 million. Scary number, but that would never occur in businesses but in municipalities, it's allowed to happen, especially in Massachusetts, because there's a state law where municipalities are not allowed to go bankrupt. This deficit of $87 million is entirely due to our long-term pension and long-term OPEB liabilities. OPEB, again, is other post-employment benefits. That's providing the health insurance to retirees, and our pensions are pensions. So that's why you see that deficit there. And what rating agencies look at is to see where we stand in comparison to other school districts. And we're right on the mark of other districts. We have, the school committee did vote at the March school committee meeting to adopt a long-term capital and financial, long-term financial policy where we're looking to build reserves as well as fund OPEB. So that's key when the rating agencies look at our financial statements as well, to show that we're not just ignoring these things and we're attacking it. I would say this was a good year, 2021 from a financial perspective. Like Brian talked about earlier, even in the throes of the pandemic, all the challenges that we had, there were some financial benefits there to those negatives. Some certainly very intentional and strategic, others were lucky. In the fund-based statements, which are on page 12 and 14 there, it shows the general fund, the circuit breaker fund, as well as other non-major funds. Our general fund, E&D, increased from 500,000 to 770,000. Certainly a much more favorable position to be in, and we're continuing on that trajectory. The circuit breaker fund, which has its own column there, we were able to maintain 1 year's worth of revenues as reserve, which was something we've always been targeting, and now we've done that. So you can see right there on those statements on pages 12 to 14, it shows at the bottom that our fund balances are increasing, which is where we want to head based on our need to develop further reserves. You go back over to the long-term financial statements, the full accruals, and it shows that we lost $5.2 million from that long-term perspective. The reason is just accounting, again, pension and OPEBs. So I did want to highlight that there. And then just to quickly at the end talk about OPEB, since it is a key topic, is that our net OPEB liability as of June 30th, 2021 amounted to 98.2 million. That was a decrease from last year, or 2020, a decrease over the past year from 112.7 million. The reason for that decrease was due to what they call differences between expected and actual experience. Basically, our actuary that calculates this liability took some conservative assumptions, and things came to fruition better than expected. So that's why that came down. I do want to highlight too that our liability right now is at 98.2 million, highly susceptible to interest rates because it has a long-term horizon. Our discount rate currently for this was 2.1 something percent. Now where we're all hearing about interest rates rising, that's going to have a positive effect on our OPEB liability for next year. So instead of a 2% discount rate, there will probably be a 3% discount rate. So that'll further reduce that liability. I guess, and then pension, Essex Regional Retirement System is the pension liability you see there, 12.3 million, decreased slightly from the prior year, 12.8 million in the prior year there. That's Essex Regional Retirement System. They're 60% funded right now. They have a funding plan through 2035. So certainly that's heading in the right direction as well. Mass Teachers Retirement, the state picks up the matching requirement for all our teaching staff. So that's why you don't see a liability there in the financial statements. There's a lot to these financials. We went over it more in depth in finance subcommittee. So I tried to keep this abbreviated, but before I get into the other reports, wanted to see if anyone had questions on the financials. No?
Does anybody have any questions? Narissa?
Can I just make a restatement of what Kyle said? Because I think the 87 million or $98 million number, depending on which one you're looking at, is a really big one. But other post-employment benefits is basically saying, look at all of our current employees and our already retired employees and look at them over their lifetime of when we owe them benefits and total that entire amount. So that's your 24-year-old teacher that you hired right now. You're assuming, right, a liability for all the benefits that you would owe that individual over their time that the district is responsible for them, as well as the 78-year-old already retired person. So that's a huge number. Right now, we pay annually what we owe, and we have had no trouble doing that. So that number, if you chunk it up annually, is very doable. The way the government accounting looks at it is the entire chunk, and that's why that number looks really big. It's not real. I remember sitting in my first OPEB GASB training and being like, wait, this doesn't actually exist. This does not exist. So don't get panicked about those big numbers, because they are not what we deal with on an annual basis. The accounting just makes us assume the entire thing all up front. Is that
it? Does that assume steps too?
I don't
Just
know.
curious.
It does not. It's
Sorry.
medical benefits only.
Yeah, I was gonna say, oh, that's
Right.
true.
Yep, so this is exclusively health insurance or medical benefits. The pension liability is where it's correlated with the salaries
Right.
of each staff members.
So that would be MTA or Essex County.
For Essex Regional Retirement, so that would be our instructional assistants, custodial staff, office staff.
Yeah.
Non-teaching. Thank you for highlighting that, Marissa.
Yes. I always appreciate that you're an auditor, Kyle, but I think sometimes kind of we're all here and you tell us.
Was.
Recovering.
Recovering auditor, sorry. We love you for your enthusiasm about it though, because we know
Thank
you
you.
love numbers. And
It's
that's-
interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because you look closely at them, so it's all good.
Any others? I can jump into the next report if not.
Please do.
Perfect. So the next report is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. This is our federal grants, compliance testing. Right on page 6 and 7 details all of the expenditures of those federal grants during the FY21 period. You can see there's on page 7, 2.8 million in total. The grants, they're required to test for compliance, a few grants every year. The auditors, they looked at one of our COVID relief grant funding programs, as well as the school lunch program. There were no audit findings, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. So this is a clean report. And that's all I have to say about that. Any questions? All right, now the interesting one, the management letter. So the requirements of the management letter is that the audit firm is to report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. No which way about it, they have to do that if we have them. We have none. So that said, we do ask them on an annual basis to put together some recommendations, informational comments, any suggestions that they can give us. So that is entirely what this report is. Starting at the top on page 2, there's a comment about our bond rating. That's been in there the last couple of years. The financial challenges that we've had. I like this iteration of the comment this year because it outlines the components of our bond rating and what matters to the rating agencies. And certainly the district, and it's highlighted at the bottom of this comment, the progress we've made to date in addressing some of these issues financial difficulties that we've had. And then also the long-term approach that we're moving towards with that, again, the long-term financial policy that was adopted by the school committee in March. So That's what that comment is there. Long-term obligations, similar, again, OPEB pensions needs to be addressed. Right at the bottom there, it says the progress that we're making, both in the short term and the long term. So they commended us for those efforts and recommended that we continue along on that path. Network security is trying to find the best way to say this. Basically, they feel obliged to put that in there because the cybersecurity environment, specifically towards school districts and municipalities, is so at risk right now. The majority of cyber attacks aren't towards corporations, they're towards municipalities and school districts. They noted that we have a very robust plan and network security program, but they still wanted to make those reading this report aware that that is a environmental issue. Investment income, talking about the increasing interest rates as of late, recommending that we take a fresh look at our banking arrangements, making sure that we're not just status quo with the interest rate earnings. We're restricted in what we can invest in, but certainly largely our deposits are held with Institution for Savings, which isn't just a fixed interest rate. As the market improves, we'll work with them to adjust those interest rates so that we can potentially have additional investment income, which is a budgeted line item in our general operating budget. And then new GASB pronouncements, accounting jargon. That's it. Yeah. That's the management letter. Again, I think this really speaks to the finance department and the district as a whole, and all those involved to be able to get this place. So thank you. Any questions on the management letter? I'm pointing to my screen in case you can't tell.
Go ahead, Paul.
So, Kyle, you called this an interesting letter. What is it about it that makes it interesting?
It's just what I wake up in the morning thinking about.
Not in the middle of the night?
So I think it's interesting because no, actually, because it's a good report. The drawback of a management letter is it will never tell you the things that you do well, but the absence of material weaknesses and significant deficiencies says that we are doing things well. In the fact that there's not really, these are purely informational comments rather than recommendations of how we should be changing our procedures or our operations. It speaks to that things are going well.
All right, so by way of background, Kyle, you used to be, or you are a CPA,
Mhm.
and you used to work for an outfit like this.
Correct.
And so why can't we get a person to sign this instead of a corporation? The letter.
The letter
Just
itself
asking.
only-
What's
Pardon?
that? Just asking.
So they're required to sign it as the audit firm. So
Okay.
Roselli Clark and Associates, is that what you mean?
Well, it says Roselli, Clark and Associates. There's no individual.
Correct, yeah, so they're required, the accounting regulations require that it's the business that signs it because they're the ones who are registered as the CPA firm. But Tony Roselli's the lead partner and Paul Gargano is the other partner on the engagement.
So if you had questions, that's who you'd call?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
I speak with them regularly throughout the year too.
I want to go to the budget. I want to go to the budget book for just a sec.
Yep.
And so this is page 30, and it talks about business and finance. It says audit. And so that's what we're talking about here, right? This is the money we pay these people.
A portion of that line item is towards these folks. Yep. So included in that line item in the budget is our annual audit, what you see here. It's our actuary report, which is KMS Actuaries, Linda Bourneville, the cost associated with that engagement. And then also we're due for a student activities engagement as well. So that would be included. So all forms of audits and actuary fees are in that line.
So it's not just Roselli?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And in human speak, an engagement is an audit.
Oh, yeah.
Just want to interpret for you, Kyle.
My Rosetta Stone. Yes.
Does anybody have any questions for Kyle?
Yeah, I just sort of echo what you were just saying, Kyle. This reads like a more positive management letter than we saw the last couple of years. It feels like the work that you and the finance committee did on our long-term planning policy is paying dividends already.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice. It's great to see all those efforts by everybody involved over the past few years finally culminating to tangible results, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I'll make a motion to receive and file the fiscal year 21 audited financial statements and associated reports.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll give a roll call vote. Erin,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes,
Caitlin,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes,
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. The next item is the policy CBI evaluation of the superintendent. I apologize for taking this outside of the usual process, but this unexpectedly came up while preparing for the superintendent's evaluation. The committee has been working over recent years to find better timing for some of the big annual items, such as the superintendent's evaluation in the district and school strategies for improvement. These are difficult to fit well within the school year, calendar year, and a budget cycle. Prior to 2016, the superintendent's evaluation was done in December, and a sentence was included in the policy that had any new members' evaluation ratings included and weighed at 50% of veterans members. Since they would have worked with the superintendent for roughly half the year, it made sense that these 50% weight would come into effect. When changes were made that eventually brought the evaluation cycle to match the school year instead, the policy was updated to reflect the new June timeframe, but the sentence with new members 50% seems to have inadvertently been left in, even though a member elected in May would have had only some orientation discussions and one meeting on which to base their ratings. Unfortunately, this was found just a week ago while preparing for the superintendent's evaluation. Narissa checked her records from when she served as chair and vice chair and found that new members had not been participating during that time. So while this has been the policy, sorry. So while this has been in the policy, it has not been the recent process that was followed. Her procedures in regards to the superintendent evaluation were adapted for those used by the chairs prior to her. So it was likely, hold on a second, please. I'm really sorry. I'm struggling reading this big long thing. Her procedures in regard to the superintendent evaluation were adapted for those used by the chairs prior to her. So it has likely been some time since new members have actually participated. I would request that the committee consider amending this policy as shown in the agenda attachment, striking the language about the 50% weighing, and instead indicate that newly elected members would not participate in the rating system in their first year, as they have only been on the committee for only a short time. I hope you guys understood what I was just trying to read here.
I want to take credit for this one. This was totally on me. I think as chair, you're kind of stuck between sort of the living process and the documents that exist around you, and in many cases have been in place long before you come in. And you're always kind of trying to check back, but you're also, you generally know how it works, and you have the previous chair's support in actually going through the actions, whatever you're doing in that particular year. This is a situation where I clearly didn't check the policy. I went back through, I think you guys have seen it in the past. There's like a huge spreadsheet that we used to tally, so I can tell exactly how many people completed the survey on any given year. So last year there were 8 members that completed the survey because Susanna didn't participate. And the year previous to that, I can look at it and see that 7 members participated because Caitlin and Paul Mayette wouldn't have participated that year. So I know how it was done, and it wasn't done by policy, and it should have been caught before this. And I apologize for that. It's kind of where we're at today, and it's unfortunate that was caught just last week.
Narissa, I just wanted to say that I can also confirm 3 years ago when I was elected, I also abstained from participation in the activity. And I was going to say and reinforce that I don't know what happened prior to me joining, but after that, all of the new members did abstain.
Thank you.
So this policy would just bring it in line with what we've done in the past. Does anybody else have any questions? Could we have a motion?
Motion.
Second, we need actual language. So I'll make a motion to approve policy CBI, evaluation of the superintendent, as presented and amended.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Have a roll call vote. Erin?
Yes.
Paul Goldner's got a question.
Oh,
It wasn't a question. I was just going to say that at policy and advocacy tonight, we discussed having having extra language for people who are appointed during the course of the year. And we sort of agreed that we don't need that if we have a situation where we want someone who's been appointed mid-year. We can examine that on a case-by-case basis if necessary. So it's my additional comment, but I am a yes as well on the motion.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Paulise?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
Yes.
Narissa?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. The next item is subcommittee reports. Policy and advocacy, Paul Goldner to update.
Okay, so we met tonight. We continued to review financial policies from section D. You should be seeing those next month. Also, we are meeting next Monday so we would like to submit a nomination to MASC for Conley's for their partnership with us during the past year, especially in administering the COVID clinics at the elementary schools. That apparently is due June 1st. It's not that nomination form is not on their website, at least that I can find easily. It did go out in their nomination packet that they emailed out. So if you have anything specific you would like to say about Conley's that you observed particularly, if you can email that to me by the end of the weekend. Policy and advocacy will meet on Monday to review and send that out. We'll send what we have drafted on Monday to Linda, so Linda can sign as the chair, but then that can go out before the June 1st deadline. Any questions on that? Okay, I think we may have actually finished the tasks we set out to accomplish this year, so we will have a meeting in June. But I'm just not sure what we're going to be doing yet. So that's it.
Finance, Caitlin?
Can't really match Kyle's enthusiasm, but everything that Kyle said enthusiastically a few minutes ago, and I don't know if anyone's watching the Salisbury meeting, but the stabilization fund went through and the budget passed, so that's all 3 towns, so that's exciting. And the only thing I'd like to note until I give it to Kyle is I think our next meeting's May 27th at 9 a.m. and not in February. So I just want to throw that out there. And it's remote.
Personnel and negotiation, Paul Lees?
Yeah, so we met yesterday remotely, Matt, Suzanne and myself, Brian and Kyle, and we hadn't met in a few months, and Brian and Kyle brought us up to speed on the status of their discussions with the custodians and the head custodians, and we provided our input to them, and we hope to begin meeting with them probably as a group in June. And I don't know, Matt, if you want to add anything to it.
Sorry, I have nothing to add on it, no.
Okay, all right. So that's it.
Okay, before we adjourn, I just want to make sure that everyone by May 31st to do the evaluation for Brian, and also to submit your first, second, and third choice for subcommittees. I want to thank you all for coming. Sorry again for my coughing. I hope everybody stays well and have a nice night. Thank you. Oh,
Make a motion
Sorry.
to adjourn.
yes.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Erin,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Elise,
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Have a nice evening.
Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Night.
Thanks, you
Great.
too.